Okay, ladies and gents, so this is a video that's going to go over all of the different parts of the heart. So I'm going to describe the different features, where they're located, and identify for them on the heart. So let me put my other glove on here. So if you look at my heart, what you're seeing right now is the anterior side. Okay, so I can tell it's the anterior side because the apex of the heart is actually pointing to the left. Okay, so actually kind of this way, right? I can also tell because if you look at this vessel right here, this is actually part of the pulmonary artery that's coming away from the heart. So it's going to the lungs. And so the pulmonary artery should be on the front. And it's actually coming up front across, and the aorta goes behind the back. Okay, so if we look here on the front part of the heart, the anterior side, one of the features that you can see right here, right, you see this indentation, this thick part right here. This is where our intervertebral, or sorry, not intervertebral, that's in your spine. Your interventricular sulcus is. And in there are coronary arteries and veins. So if you look on the outside of your hearts, you can see all of these different indentations, right? This is where a lot of the coronary artery and veins are located. So your coronary arteries and veins, these are the vessels that actually supply blood to your heart, okay? So your heart doesn't get blood from the stuff that's pumping through it on the inside. It only gets blood from the vessels on the outside. So the vessels, as the blood is flowing through those. So it gets pumped through those, through different parts of your body, connects to the aorta, and actually receives blood from that pathway. Okay, so some other external features. So again, we got the apex, which is the point here at the bottom. We have on the sides here our atricles and ventricles. So right side over here, left side over here. Remember, your right atria, right ventricle are the blood on this side. So right atria is where your blood enters, goes to the right ventricle, to the lungs, comes into the left atria, out the left ventricle, which then carries blood to the rest of the heart. Or sorry, from the heart to the rest of the body. So if we look on the side here, one of your features you were supposed to identify were the auricles. So if we look at this flap right here, okay, this flap right here is actually part of the auricle of our right atria. Okay, so these flaps here, auricle, AU, all right, it's like aural, which means ear. So this oral, these auricles are like the ears of your atria, and they expand when your heart actually pumps blood and sends it through. And this is the other auricle on the other side of the ventricle. Okay, or sorry, atria, other side of the atria. Your ventricles are down here at the bottom, so we got our right and we got our left ventricles, and those again pump blood outside of the heart. So atria, remember, they go from one part of the heart to another part, right? And then your ventricles pump blood out, right, to the rest of the body. Okay. So let's go through the different features on the outside that we can see and identify. So besides the auricles, we can see where the ventricles are located, the interventricular sulcus up here. We can also see some vessels that come off the top. So if we follow this vessel right here, this vessel is actually part of our pulmonary trunk. That's one word that you might not see, might have heard, all right, but your pulmonary trunk, this vessel right here, where it's going is actually going to your lungs, so part of the pulmonary artery. So it comes out this way to your lungs on each side. If we look on the posterior side of the heart, the back side, we can see a few other vessels. Okay, so if we look here, so if we're flipping it over, right, we're going from this is still our left side, so this is on the left side on the back of the heart. You can see this vessel right here, and it's going into my atria, my right or my left atria. So this is part of the pulmonary vein. So that enters into the atria here, the right atria, or sorry, left atria is your pulmonary vein. So again, remember, veins go to the heart, arteries come away from the heart, and then this pulmonary vein is actually a vein that has very highly oxygenated blood. So it comes directly from the lungs into here. There's lots of oxygen in those because it just picked it up from the lungs. Okay. If you look on this side with our right atria, right, we're going to see this vessel that's right here. This vessel that's going directly into our auricle. So this flap right here. So this wide vessel here that's actually collecting blood, and if I put my finger actually through here, you can see it from the inside of the heart. This wide vessel right here, this is part of the vena cava. This is actually the superior vena cava, and what it's doing is collecting blood from the systemic circuit of our heart, or of our blood flow. So it's from the outside. Any part of the flow that's outside of the lungs is part of the systemic circuit, so that blood is pooling here and coming into the right atria. So blood enters the right atria through the vena cava. Okay. Another vessel that you guys can see besides the pulmonary trunk, which is part of the pulmonary artery right up here, pulmonary vein, which is coming in on the backside here, is you can see your aorta. Okay, so behind our pulmonary trunk, you can actually see this arch. So there's a lot of fat here, but you can see the top part here, this gray part is part of our transverse aorta. So remember, we've got ascending, transverse, and then down here would be descending. It goes behind the heart. This descending aorta is what continues to the systemic circuit. And we can see a couple of things that are coming off the top. So this first part right here is actually our innominate artery. So if I put my probe in right here, right, this is part that's going to the head as well as on the right side, so going to the right subclavian and right common carotid arteries. And then if we continue down this way, we actually get our first, our left common carotid, and then our subclavian is actually removed off of here, so we're not able to see that. But we can see again here, if you look here at the top, these are more of the vessels that are coming from the aorta. So this is actually a continuation of the aorta, and then we can see if we go up a little bit further, that's where our innominate artery is coming out. Okay. So those are external features. Let's start looking at internal things of our heart. So what I did here is I took a scalpel and I cut on either side below the auricles on the right and left side and made a cut through the apex. So what you can do is then reflect the heart back. Okay, so you can take this top part and you can lift it up to see the inside. Okay, so this is actually the inside of our heart. And what you can see here are the different chambers. So remember, we've got 4 chambers in our heart. If you look up in this hole right here, this is where our right atria is. This is where our right ventricle is. Left ventricle, and you can tell it's the left because it has a very thick wall of muscle, because think about it, the left ventricle has to pump blood to the rest of the system inside of the body, so it has to be very strong. And if we look up in here, this is where our left atria is. So when you guys are looking on the inside of your hearts, you should see this structure in the center, okay? And it comes up between the atria as well. This is the septum. So the septum of the heart is separating your ventricles and atria from each other, so the two sides from each other. If you hear about hole in the heart or congenital birth defects, oftentimes it's because there is a hole that exists right here. And that's because of the circuit that exists in fetuses when they're receiving blood and nutrients from the mother. It actually bypasses part of the heart and gets carried through in a different pathway. And because of that, we'll end up with like improper fusing of the septum here, so you'll see a hole between the ventricles sometimes. This heart, however, has none of those problems. This is a very healthy sheath. Some other stuff you can see in here, if you look at this tissue, you guys might be able to see, and you can see it also on this upper side here. You see these kind of stringy things on the inside of the heart. So this stringy stuff, this is actually part of the valves of the heart. So the chorda tendineae, or the heartstrings. These heartstrings are connected to a muscle. It's a papillary muscle. It's a little extension, and these things are tough. They're super strong. Right? They have to be strong because they have to deal with the high pressure of blood that's inside of the heart. The valves in the heart that you guys need to be able to identify are the atrioventricular valves, the valves that are between your atria and ventricles. So you've got two, one on the right, one on the left. On the right side, you have a valve that's got a couple different parts, and on the other side, you have another number of flaps. You can call them bicuspid and tricuspid valves, but I always remember the right and left atrioventricular valves. It's easier for me to remember because it tells me, okay, right and left, right? It's between the atria and ventricles. That way I can describe it every time. Another valve that you guys can kind of see up here is we're going into our aorta. So this is our right left ventricle going up into the aorta, so where I put my finger. If you look under here, you can actually see part of the semilunar valves. Okay, so these valves, semilunar, are between the ventricles and the other systems of flow, so either to the systemic circuit or to the pulmonary circuit, which is to your lungs. These valves are there to prevent backflow between the ventricles and the rest of the body. People who might have heart murmurs, that's due to poor signaling, or people who might have weakened valves, they will have backflow, and that lowers blood pressure, and that can cause a lot of issues in people. So if you have weakened or damaged valves, those things are oftentimes suggested to get checked very quickly. Okay. So I'm going to trace the blood flow through the heart. I'm done with the heart dissection for today. So if we've got blood coming in, blood enters on the right side first. And we've got here, if we look on the inside, you can see into your atria. So you can see on the other side here, this is part of the ventricle as well. But it's going to the atria. So you can actually follow that through. You see my finger right here. It's actually poking into the auricles here, and if I move my finger to the side, you can actually see it come out of the vena cava. So blood enters the superior and inferior vena cavas, the right atria of the heart. We go from the right atria, it goes through the atrioventricular valve here to the right ventricle. Then from this ventricle, if I poke my finger through actually this top part up here, right, because of the way I cut my heart, is that when I poke my finger through this part of the right atria, you can see here's my finger going through the pulmonary artery. So if I put my finger through here as well, I can trace it back and go directly through this vessel. Okay, and this is going and meeting me in my atria, so in my ventricle. So if I poke my finger through, right, bam, you can see it. All right, so that's my going through the pulmonary trunk or the pulmonary artery because it's leaving the heart. You can see it's going through here. I can tell it's through the right ventricle because the muscle out here is much weaker. Right? It's not as thick, it's not as strong because it's not pumping blood as far. Okay. So it goes through my pulmonary artery. From my pulmonary artery, it then goes to the vessels that lead to the lungs, picks up oxygen from the lungs, and enters on the back of the heart, so the posterior side of the heart, through this vessel here, right into our left atria. So in our atria here, we're going to have our again, another valve, another atrioventricular valve. So if you look at my finger here, this is my finger coming from the lungs. So blood is entering this small chamber here, the atria, and then from there it goes through this vessel, or this valve. So you can see all the chorda tendineae, all the papillary muscles, comes through this valve into the left ventricle, and then out the left ventricle. It's going to go through the ventricle and then out my aorta. Okay, so if you see here, my finger is coming back behind. This is where my aorta is leaving. Okay, so for the heart, again, review all of the different features, so the things on the outside, things on the inside. Know the pathway of blood flow through the heart, and review that a few times to make sure that you're capable of telling me the answers to that and describing that on your exam. Okay? So if you have questions and concerns about this process, so reading these things and looking through this information, let me know, and I can help you. Okay, so good luck studying on this stuff. Again, review the concepts a few times and watch this video if you are unsure. All right, so good luck.